Hi, thank you so very, very much for coming to my first InfoSec talk. The title is Don't Wait, Level Up, 5 Tactics to Building Your InfoSec Career. So I wanted this to have sort of a walkthrough tutorial game feel, as we have 5 specific tactics that we'll go into. The first one is hunker down. Find a place to really build your core skill sets. This has actually been one of the hardest ones for me personally. Second one is strength training. Learning how to cycle through your strengths and weaknesses when you're learning in order to avoid getting discouraged. Third one is motivation. This section deals with both the inspiration and the discipline that's needed to really build your skills over time. 4 is mentors and coaches. With this one, we'll go into resources for networking and seeking guidance. And failure. It's going to happen. We're going to talk about it. With little help from our old friends from Katamari Damacy, our walkthrough is ready to roll. Before we move on entirely, I want to talk about what makes InfoSec a career worth pursuing, whether it's change from your current career or relaunching after taking a professional break. I reached out on Twitter and in Slack and Discord channels, and 2 types of responses really kept cropping up. People who want to change the world and people who want steady work. Neither one of those is bad. With their permission, I have just a couple of people's quotes that really stood out to me. The first one was Tanisha, who said it, I think, really well. She said there's a lot of new tech coming out that isn't taking privacy or safety into consideration. I want to get involved. She is absolutely right. People have a tendency to be so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. But then on the other hand, we have Matt, who observed there's more than enough work for anyone. What other industry can say that? And he is also not wrong. It doesn't matter which roles you fit into or where you look, from Forbes to Reddit, everybody seems to recognize the fact that we're one of the few industries that doesn't have any problems staying in work. We have problems finding people who are interested. But whether your goals are to make change immediately or build something more long-term, there are roles that anybody can apply themselves to, as long as they're willing to put in the work. But okay, so if that's what's being offered to us, what do we offer this industry in return? Especially for non-traditional candidates, it's important to remember that there is plenty. Consider our unique backgrounds. Maturity, for one, is always an asset, as David Meme quipped. But quite literally, being familiar with older tech can be valuable in terms of research and tactical analysis. Besides, with the variety of roles that can fall under the umbrella of information security, it's virtually impossible for one person to know every platform or tool available. Likewise, with having a familiarity with all business types, it's just not possible. Corporate roles and backgrounds bring a familiarity with enterprise-level organizational structure, politics, and nuance. But on the other hand, independent professionals bring a drive and a creativity that can't hide in a crowd. Startup energy is a real thing. But where to begin? How to start, as the king would say. Once you've been bitten by the bug, it can be a daunting task to figure out how to get your foot in the door. Humbly, I now present the following 5 tactics to level up your InfoSec career. First one, like we talked about, hunker down. Getting on-the-job experience wherever you are with teams that are even tangentially related to your desired career move are valuable. This is a process that spanned years for me personally. and I think it should. It allows you to continue to build up your skill sets in both a broad and a deep dive sense. Big companies versus small companies. You get exposed to different hardware, different experiences with vendors, licensing, clients. The thing to remember is that none of these experiences is wasted. Even when you're performing tasks that you swear you will never use again. Hi, I was a Clearwell admin. Nobody knows what that is! But I've used it twice this year on assessments. So you seriously never know what's going to come in handy. I've used skills that I've learned as a cable company tech, a network admin for a corporate company, a fortune teller. I've used all of those skill sets in my current job. Nothing is wasted. Shadowing is another solid way of getting a look on the job at other roles you might be interested in, and also getting a chance to talk to the folks who are living the day-to-day realities of it. Ask questions, take notes, but the most important thing is to sit back and kind of absorb the work that's going on around you, the tone of the team, how they work with other teams, and what your personal connection to the work might be. You may have a lot of experiences, and some of them may not pan out the way that you expect initially. It's okay. It's part of the journey. Tip 2, strength training. Build on your current strengths. When you're seeking out new challenges and new skills to learn, be aware that there can be kind of a learning curve. Jumping into a new discipline or a project with both feet can wind up being frustrating or worse, discouraging. I work towards balancing between projects, cycling through familiar skill sets and new skill sets. I switch between projects that might be heavier on the creative side once, and I come to a stopping point. And then I move on to something that I might be less familiar with. For me, that usually means working on an exploit, learning to code better, something that I find more challenging. Cycling back and forth between my strengths and my weaknesses in this way helps, even though I might get frustrated on one project, it might not work out exactly the way I thought. I can always think back and know that I did something that I was proud of recently. And it can help work through those frustrating, challenging moments. Working through that takes motivation. There's a couple of things we're going to talk about with motivation. 1 hour a day is the very first tip that I will give you. This is a concept that's strongly endorsed by movements such as 100 Days of Code, and it's especially suited to learning new technical skill sets. It can be easy to lose motivation when things get difficult, when things get dull. It's easy to be motivated when things are interesting and stimulating. You might do 9 hours of work on a project one day, but the next day you're really burnt out on it and you don't want to deal with it anymore. If you make yourself have the discipline for 1 hour a day, it makes you focus. You learn to use your time more efficiently. I have 1 hour to accomplish my goal today. The other thing that you're doing is building good habits. You're building discipline. Discipline is what you fall back on when inspiration fails you. Inspiration will always fail you. You have to build those good habits, and you have to make a commitment, either to your team or to yourself, especially to yourself, to follow through. Commitment is the key to your discipline. You have to make up your mind to check in, do the hour, and follow through as often as you can make yourself. And it's not going to happen every day. There's going to be off days. If you have an off day, don't kill yourself over it. If you have 2 off days, all right, so fine. Discipline and commitment also mean getting back on the horse when you're ready and starting over or picking up where you left off. But you make that commitment to yourself and then you follow through. Number 4, Part of following through is mentors and coaches. I encourage you to seek diverse mentors. Seek a lot of different people. Get their opinions. You might not agree with all of them. That's good too. One single mentor is rarely going to be your sole guide as your career progresses. You shouldn't have one single mentor. Social media is especially valuable for this, but be aware for your own tolerance for shenanigans. Social media can also become toxic if you allow it. No! What? Twitter. I also encourage you to attend talks at conferences, and where appropriate, approach speakers with questions afterwards. This is actually how I met my friend and boss, and how I decided that penetration testing was a career path that I was interested in. It took me 3 years from my first conversation after a talk he gave before I was ready to make that jump in my career. But it was 3 years of learning, on-the-job experience, shadowing with other people, and really getting a feel for what might be my connection to the industry. Various channels on Slack and Discord all exist for niche groups and with the intent of growing different skill sets and getting to learn in a group environment, even if you're not geographically, physically located near a group of people that you can meet up with all the time. I do have a couple of links. There is, especially for the women in the room, there's a ladies CTF circle on Slack. And there have been, I think there's a Discord server out there as well. I will mention those are by invitation, so the link's at the end. I encourage you to reach out to those moderators of those groups, introduce yourself, find out if you want to get involved. And that, I've probably talked way too fast. I'm sorry. That brings us to the last failure. Don't fear failure. You're going to fail. This can be seriously one of the biggest hurdles. It is one of the most frustrating. It happens to everybody. You have to expect a certain amount of failure when you're trying to figure out where you fit. Every experience is valuable, like I keep ranting, and making mistakes is everyone's common denominator. In a past life, I was a rowing coach. Told you I use a lot of different skill sets. Boats, rivers, that sort of thing. And we had a saying that we used to remind all of our novice rowers throughout the season, and usually it was necessary to remind them more than once, that there were two types of rowers. Those who have fallen into the water, and those who have yet to fall into the water. It works the same way in tech. It doesn't matter whether you're red team, blue team, corporate enterprise, fiercely independent, mistakes will be made. Production impacting mistakes. It's what you choose to do when those mistakes happen that turn them into opportunities and lessons. How we choose to respond when we discover that we've genuinely made an error, or are the root cause of an incident. This informs our teammates, our bosses, our clients, who we really are under pressure. Our authentic selves, you might say. We can't control everything. We can't control everything that happens to us or our projects, no matter how much we might try. But we have the power to see things as challenges and to decide to grow from them, regardless of the outcome. I have a misplaced slide. This is supposed to come after the Q&A. And I've totally talked too fast, I think. Yes, 16 minutes out of a 50-minute slot. Like I said, it's my first one. So, I'm still alive. No tomatoes. Thank you. I guess from here, y'all got 45 minutes for Q&A. What's up? Yes, let me put the useful links back up there. And I will put a slide deck somewhere available for you guys also, so if you want the data that comes from that. It can be. So the question is, when you're trying to advance in that career, especially if you like your organization or your company and you don't really want to leave, how do you negotiate or work yourself into a better position, a position that you like better? I've been there. The tactic that I took initially was the shadowing that I discussed earlier. I went to my direct manager. I let them know that I was interested in doing more, and I got the opportunity to shadow with the security team. I was on vulnerability and patching and was just sort of working my way kind of through the ranks there. And it gave me an opportunity to not only see sort of what corporate enterprise InfoSec looked like, but also the team as a whole and how they interacted with their bosses was informational at other companies later. So shadowing is one good tactic. The negotiation part of it, I would say when you're doing annual reviews, bring up goals that you have personally. Talk to your manager. Try to make a relationship with them and get them to be pulling for you. Because if you can work together on it, then you start to see a little more progress a little faster. But yeah, make professional goals a part of your either annual review, quarterly review. I would say even on a monthly basis, if you wanted to start having meetings, as long as you're getting it in front of the people that you report to, they know that it's a passion. And at some point, it does come to a head. And you do have to make a decision. Previously, I was a network administrator, and I was pretty happy doing what I did. I liked my company. They stood by me pretty well. But it wasn't exactly my passion, and I knew that I wanted to do more. And I had that relationship with my manager at the time where he understood that I was even doing stuff on the side. I was working on CTFs. I was building up my skill sets. And as long as it didn't interrupt my day-to-day tasks, he was cool with it. But eventually it did come up where I had the opportunity to make that jump. And you have to make the decision for yourself whether it's your passion or your company that guides you. And if you really are passionate and your company isn't willing to make that a reality for you, I would always advocate for going towards your passion. Companies will come and go. Usually we stay because of good managers, good teams. It's rarely, small amount of the time, it's actually the company that you stay for. And if that's the case, usually they're willing to work with you. So sometimes you do have to make the jump. I did, and personally, I'm far, far better off and happier the way that I am. So I always advocate to go towards your passion. Sure. There was definitely a moment of crossroads for me. There were a couple of them specifically. So the first one happened, I was in Columbus, Ohio at the ISSA conference, and this gentleman over here, Phil Grimes, the Grape Ape, was doing a talk on physical security. I was not there to see him. I was there to see Frank Abagnale, who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that name. He's the guy who inspired Catch Me If You Can, the movie, the book, all of it. I was there to see Frank Abagnale speak. And it was phenomenal. It was almost completely irrelevant to current tech. He was talking about check washing. I did get his favorite pen that cannot be check washed out of the whole talk. And then I stuck around afterwards because he had a throng of people around him, and I kind of wanted to go shake his hand, but I didn't want to be one of those people. So I stuck around, and this guy got up on stage and started talking about physical security. And if you have ever had the opportunity to watch a talk about a physical pen test, or have had the opportunity to perform a physical pen test, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. It is breaking into places, it's dressing up, it's cops and robbers, it's playing spies, and it was everything that appealed to the child in me. And it was doing it without getting busted. So after the talk, I walked up to him, shook his hand, and said, "That was crazy." Because the one thing that stuck out for me was your comment about when you work on blue team, and like I said, I was a network admin at the time. When you work on the blue team, you've got to be right 100% of the time. When you work on the red team, usually you only have to be right once. I was really tired of being on the blue team. It was a good company. They stuck by me. I was getting bored with what I was learning. They weren't pushing me towards my passion. And for the next 3 years, because we talked about it, and he said, "All right, I'm going to build out a team. Talk to me when you're ready to do this jump." And so for the next 3 years, I worked network admin, system admin, security admin. I just kind of bounced around within the same company, doing different jobs. But always in the back of my mind was this thought of going to play spy. And it would be so much fun. And in the meantime, I started doing CTFs and learning about web application security and the variances of playing spy online. And that Venn diagram of spy and hacker kind of has a middle ground there. About 3 years later, I had been doing all of this work, and I got a phone call. A question. "I'm building out a team. Would you like to join me?" My company had not pushed me towards my passion. They had kept me where I was because they needed me. I decided to go towards the passion. And so for the last 18 months, I think, I came in pretty green. And I have been a security consultant, penetration tester. I didn't know a single thing, I feel like, when I got into it, in spite of all of the work that I had done up until that point. I felt like I was starting from zero. And it was great. I've been given the opportunity to learn operating systems I hadn't mucked about with before. It gave me the opportunity to dig in on some really nasty exploits that I had never had a chance to set off and watch in real life before. And it also introduced me to the hell that is writing reports, which hasn't deterred me, but boy, that's a tough one. But yeah, that was my aha moment, was a combination of figuring out what spoke to the child in me and then getting the opportunity to make that jump. I had struggled for 3 years trying to force it to happen, and it hadn't. So when it was handed to me, all I could do was take it. I got asked. I had actually submitted this talk before and didn't get accepted initially, but they needed another person to fill in. So I panicked and said yes. Anybody else? Oh, Phoenix. Ooh. Red flags when you're at a company or interviewing at a company. Whew. The biggest red flag that I've ever seen is when you walk into a room and the person that has invited you to the interview doesn't get your name right. It's a big one for me. My name is spelled funny. It's not that funny. My name's Megan, but it's Meaghann. It's 18 points at Scrabble. If you've invited me to an interview and you shake my hand and say, Megan, and you don't pause and say, or, and wait, at least politely for me to correct you, it's a major sign of disrespect. That's one of the biggest red flags right off the bat for me. A red flag when you're at your company currently, if you feel like your requests to grow are being ignored or being overlooked, or that you're intentionally being kept in a position because you're useful, because they don't have anybody else who's willing to take that job on, that's a big red flag for me. That is a company that's not going to advance you. That's a company that's not interested in your passion. They're interested in what you're good at right now. Even if you're happy with that, it may not be what you're happy with forever. Other big red flags, just if there's blatant disrespect, people that aren't willing to work together as a team, people who want to just showboat, be rock stars, things like that. Those are kind of red flags for me. I'm in it for the team. I'm, as Andrew Hay is fond of saying, I'm in it for the users. So for me, people who just want to be in it for the glory, that probably sets off a red flag for me. If you want to go be a rock star, go be a rock star. That's cool. But if you're there to build a team, to work, I think probably that motivation should show through. Conferences, the question is, how do you figure out which role that you have a passion for? And it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of going and sometimes shadowing again. Going to conferences is an excellent way of sitting in talks and finding other people in the room who have similar questions. For me, it was CTFs because it gave me an opportunity to try on different tactics, different exploits. Really just getting the time to talk to people who are in the roles that you think that you're interested in. But I think there's also a lot of potential jumping around, not jumping around, but moving from one job style or role to another. And having that opportunity, taking those opportunities is important. Thank you. And to that point, mentorship and guidance has been really crucial for me in finding out what I like, what I'm into. Social media, again, like I said, can be very useful for that. Different Slack channels, Discord channels, where you can get an opportunity to talk to people. A lot of them are really nice and even have mentorship channels within those groups. Anybody else? Hey, we made it all the way after 30 minutes. Thanks, guys. Go team. All right. Yep. You do. No, that's absolutely true. You need probably 3 or 4 years of experience just kind of bopping around, trying on different things, trying and failing before you're even going to start at zero. And that it sounds maybe a little defeatist, but looking at it as an opportunity, you get a lot of hills and valleys within a career. And sometimes you find yourself going on the upswing and you may plateau for a little while, find that you're in a spot that you like and that you're learning, and then you get that opportunity. And I encourage everybody to take that opportunity. I can't emphasize this enough. Companies will come and go. You have to go for the job that you like. You have to go for the task that you like. Projects. I'm not sure I answered your question there. I will tell you how I did it. Yep, IT. IT was how help desk was how I got into it. I used to be a medievalist that was going to be a librarian. At one point, I decided I liked eating, so I needed a different job. And coincidentally, I was pretty good at IT in high school and college, so I got in with Teleperformance Call Tech. If anybody's familiar, it's an outsourced third-party help desk company. It's hell. But it gave me some really good experience. It gave me good experience working with users, explaining things. Once you have had the experience of explaining where the any key is to 15 people in an 8-hour period, you can explain anything to anyone ever. And that's really useful in other skill sets. But yeah, if you're looking for that bottom level, I just want to get my foot in the door, the way I did it was with help desks and IT. I actually managed to work out of that help desk into management and then went right back down onto a password reset team. That's all I did. 8 hours. No more finding the any key, just password resets. I spent about 9 months at the help desk, and then I quit. And then I came back a month later because I couldn't get another job. And so I spent another 6 months there, and then I got the password reset job. In my interview, I'm sitting there with them, and the manager says, "You're an operations manager." I said, "Yeah, it's okay." He said, "This is a password reset help desk job. Are you sure that you want to do this?" It will tell you something about the environment that I was in that I said, "Yes, get me out of here." So a lot of hills and valleys, but from password resets, I worked up to a business applications team that gave me an enormous amount of exposure to all kinds of healthcare business applications, things that otherwise I might never have been able to dig my fingers into. I became the SME on certain topics that were really obscure or some of the more well-known. From there, that got me a job with vulnerability and compliance, patching. that sort of awakened in me the fact that I didn't want to stay on a patching team forever, but tangentially, I got to shadow with an InfoSec team. That really started. I had a manager from that InfoSec team who told me, I'll let you shadow my guys, as long as you promise me you're not going to go into pen testing. That's sexy shit and everybody wants to go into it. I am now a pen tester. But a lot of little ups and downs where I just took the opportunity to work with other teams or be sometimes the only person who had to wear all the hats. And that also ramps up your skill sets pretty quickly. But personally, when presented with a brash environment, I tend to make the situation worse. Or better, depending on your perception. I'm not popular with HR departments. So for folks for whom that is not their cup of tea, I would say just be really honest with yourself. Interviews in person and on the phone are, team interviews specifically, are really important for getting a feel for how people interact with each other. And if you have the opportunity to find that team and interact with them outside of a strict interview experience, like at a conference or something like that, that can also be really valuable. You get the opportunity to see what they're like in their off hours and see if these are people that you would be friends with. You don't have to be friends, obviously, with everybody on your team, but if you get the impression that there's just a really strong mismatch with one, two, or all of the people on that team, I would say go with your gut. If it's just not a good fit, it's not a good fit. It's not a good or bad judgmental thing. It's whatever fits best for you. I hope that answered your question. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? Sold. Awesome. Thank you all so much.